They ignored his sniper angle until the shot hit a Japanese officer at 480 miles per hour. The air hung thick and heavy, a suffocating blanket woven from humidity, the stench of decay, and the metallic tang of dried blood. It was another sweltering day in the unforgiving crucible of the Pacific, a theater of war where every inch of ground was paid for in sweat, tears, and lives. The year was 1944, and the relentless island-hopping campaign continued its grim march across an ocean vast and indifferent. For the men of the United States Marine Corps, each sunrise brought with it the certainty of renewed struggle against an enemy as tenacious as the jungle itself. They fought not just the Japanese Imperial Army, but also the insidious grip of disease, the relentless sun, and the psychological torment of constant, unseen threats. Among these hardened warriors was Sergeant Frank Miller, a man whose unassuming demeanor belied a singular, almost preternatural gift. He was a sniper, and his reputation preceded him, whispered in hushed tones around late-night campfires and in the brief lulls between barrages. They called him Eagle Eye, a moniker earned through a string of impossible shots and an uncanny ability to read the battlefield like an open book. But Miller was more than just a crack shot. He possessed a mind that saw the world in angles and trajectories, a mathematical precision that bordered on obsession. Where others saw a static target, Miller perceived a dynamic problem, a complex equation of wind, distance, gravity, and the subtle, almost imperceptible nuances of atmospheric pressure. His weapon of choice was a Springfield M1903A4, its scope a familiar extension of his own vision. The rifle was his confidant, a silent partner in the grim dance of war. He knew its every creak, its every whisper, the exact weight of its trigger pull. He spent hours meticulously cleaning it, adjusting it, ensuring it was always in perfect harmony with his intent. For Miller, marksmanship was not merely about hitting a target. It was about understanding the very fabric of reality that governed the flight of a bullet. The objective was a heavily fortified Japanese command post, dug deep into the side of a jungle chokehill. For weeks, it had been a thorn in the side of the American advance, a relentless source of coordinated resistance. Its strategic location offered the Japanese a panoramic view of the American positions, allowing them to direct devastating artillery fire and orchestrate deadly ambushes. Multiple attempts to dislodge them had met with brutal failure, each assault repelled by entrenched machine guns and a seemingly endless supply of fanatical defenders. The commanding officer, a stern but weary Major Thompson, had grown increasingly frustrated. The casualties were mounting, morale was beginning to fray, and the overall campaign risked bogging down. Intelligence reports indicated that a high-ranking Japanese officer, possibly a colonel responsible for the island's defenses, was operating from this specific command post. Eliminating him would not only cripple the enemy's command and control, but also deliver a significant psychological blow. The problem was getting within range. The terrain was a nightmare of dense foliage, booby traps, and hidden sniper nests. Any direct approach was suicidal. Miller had been studying the hill for days, poring over maps, observing through his powerful binoculars, and making meticulous notes in a small, worn notebook. He wasn't just looking at the obvious approaches. He was searching for the impossible, the overlooked, the blind spot. He noticed a peculiar feature, a small, almost imperceptible gap in the canopy on the far side of a ravine, nearly 1,000 yards from the command post. It was a long shot, an incredibly difficult one, but it offered a direct line of sight to a specific, reinforced bunker entrance that was frequently used by officers. He brought his observations to Major Thompson and Captain Davies, the company commander. "Sir," Miller began, pointing to a crude sketch he'd made, "I believe there's an angle, a shot, from this position across the ravine. It's a long one, but it offers a clear line to the main entrance of their command bunker. If we can get a spotter there, and I can get a clear shot, we might be able to take out their commander." Captain Davies, a pragmatic man who trusted conventional tactics, frowned. "Miller, that's nearly 1,000 yards. Through dense jungle, across a ravine. And the bunker entrance is barely a foot wide. You'd need a miracle, not an angle." Major Thompson, while respecting Miller's reputation, was also skeptical. "Sergeant, we've tried everything. Our artillery can't hit that specific entrance without risking friendly fire on our own advances, and our infantry can't get close enough. 1,000-yard shot on a moving target or a small aperture, it's beyond the realm of practical possibility. Even for you." Miller persisted, his voice calm but firm. "It's not just about distance, sir. It's about the angle. The elevation difference, the wind currents that funnel through that ravine. I've calculated it. If we account for the drop, the Coriolis effect at this latitude, and the specific air density, the bullet won't just hit the target. It will strike with maximum kinetic energy, almost as if it were a much closer shot. The velocity will still be tremendous." He explained his theory, detailing how the bullet, fired from a slightly elevated position across the ravine, would follow a parabolic arc, yes, but the effective angle of impact would be flatter than one might expect from a horizontal 1,000-yard shot. He spoke of bullet drop compensation, of minute wind adjustments, of the specific physics of terminal ballistics. He even mentioned the rotational effect of the Earth, a factor almost entirely ignored in practical combat marksmanship at these ranges. He called it his sniper angle. Davies snorted dismissively. "Coriolis effect? Miller, are you trying to write a physics textbook or win a war? We need practical solutions, not academic theories. 1,000 yards is 1,000 yards. The bullet will drop like a stone, and even if by some insane luck it makes it, it'll be a spent slug. It won't penetrate anything, let alone a reinforced bunker." Major Thompson sighed, rubbing his temples. "Sergeant, I appreciate your initiative, truly. But we can't risk resources, men, or time on what amounts to a Hail Mary pass based on theoretical physics. We need to plan another frontal assault, perhaps under cover of darkness." Miller felt a familiar frustration, a deep-seated annoyance at the inability of others to grasp what seemed so clear to him. It wasn't theory. It was an applied understanding of the world. "Sir, with all due respect, a frontal assault will cost us more men than setting up this shot. I'm not asking for a full platoon. I need a spotter and a secure position for my rifle. Give me one chance. If I miss, we revert to your plan. But if I hit, we could save dozens of lives." The major considered his words, weighing the cost. He knew Miller was exceptional, but this claim felt outlandish, even for him. Still, the casualties from the previous assaults haunted him. "All right, Miller," Thompson finally conceded, his voice heavy with resignation. "You have 24 hours. Take Corporal Jenkins as your spotter. Find your angle. But if you don't have a clear, viable shot within that time, you fall back, and we proceed with the conventional assault. Is that understood?" "Understood, sir," Miller replied, a flicker of grim satisfaction in his eyes. He knew he was right. He felt it in his bones, in the way his mind mapped out the invisible forces at play. Corporal Jenkins, a lanky, quiet man with an almost encyclopedic knowledge of enemy positions, was already packing his gear when Miller returned to their tent. Jenkins had served with Miller on several deployments and implicitly trusted the sniper's judgment, even when it seemed to defy logic. "The Major give you the green light, Sarge?" "A conditional one," Miller grunted, checking the action of his rifle. "He thinks I'm chasing ghosts. But we'll show them what ghosts can do." They moved out under the cloak of pre-dawn darkness, navigating the treacherous jungle terrain with the silent efficiency of seasoned veterans. Every rustle of leaves, every snapped twig, was a potential giveaway, a death sentence. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and decaying vegetation, occasionally punctuated by the acrid smell of distant gunfire or the faint, metallic tang of the nearby sea. They moved like shadows, their movements fluid and practiced, their senses acutely attuned to the subtle shifts in the environment. Hours later, after a grueling climb and a painstaking traverse across a narrow, rickety natural bridge of vines and exposed roots, they reached their designated position. It was a small, elevated ledge, partially concealed by a dense cluster of tropical ferns and a gnarled, ancient tree. From this vantage point, the ravine stretched out before them, a deep chasm of shadows and echoes, and on the opposite side, nestled amongst the foliage, was the Japanese command post. Through Miller's powerful spotting scope, the tiny aperture of the bunker entrance was just visible, a dark, rectangular maw against the lighter earthworks. "This is it, Jenkins," Miller whispered, his voice barely audible above the chirping of unseen insects. "Our sniper angle starts here." Jenkins, his face grim with concentration, began setting up his own spotting scope, a smaller, more portable version of Miller's. He knew his role: to confirm the target, to relay windage and elevation adjustments, and to observe the impact. A sniper's spotter was his eyes and ears, an indispensable partner in the deadly ballet of long-range engagement. Miller meticulously prepared his firing position. He dug a shallow depression for his elbows, ensuring a stable platform. He adjusted the bipod of his rifle, checking the level. He cleared away any loose debris that might interfere with his line of sight or create an acoustic anomaly. He took out his small notebook and a specialized wind meter, beginning his calculations. The wind was tricky, swirling erratically within the ravine, then picking up speed as it cleared the opposite ridge. He had to account for the average velocity, but also for specific gusts, anticipating their arrival and duration. The air temperature, the barometric pressure, every variable was factored into his mental model. He spent the next several hours in a state of intense focus, observing the bunker entrance, tracking the subtle shifts in light and shadow, waiting for the opportune moment. He watched as Japanese soldiers moved in and out, but no high-ranking officers. Patience was a sniper's greatest virtue, and Miller possessed it in spades. He knew that haste was the enemy of precision. Finally, as the sun began its slow descent towards the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a figure emerged from the bunker entrance. He was clearly an officer, distinguished by his uniform and the retinue of guards that accompanied him. He paused for a moment, speaking to one of his subordinates, his back partially turned to Miller's position. It was now or never. "Target acquired, Sarge," Jenkins whispered, his voice tight with anticipation. "High-ranking officer. Roughly 7 o'clock position from the entrance, facing roughly 2 o'clock. Looks like he's giving orders." Miller took a deep breath, his lungs filling with the humid air. He exhaled slowly, steadily, his entire body becoming still, a living extension of his rifle. His eye peered through the scope, the reticle settling on the officer's upper back, just below the neck. The distance stretched out, a vast expanse of air and jungle, but through the lens, the target seemed impossibly close, a perfect, albeit tiny, bull's-eye. He ignored the doubt, the skepticism, the conventional wisdom that deemed this shot impossible. He trusted his calculations, his rifle, and his own unwavering belief in the physics of his sniper angle. His finger curled around the trigger, the familiar cold steel a comfort against his skin. He held his breath, waiting for that perfect fraction of a second when all the variables aligned. The wind, for a brief moment, seemed to lull, a fleeting calm before the storm. He squeezed. The rifle bucked against his shoulder, a familiar, powerful recoil. The crack of the shot echoed across the ravine, sharp and sudden, momentarily silencing the jungle's incessant chorus. The bullet left the barrel at an astonishing velocity, a tiny projectile of copper and lead, embarking on its precisely calculated journey across the 1,000 yards of air and space. It was a silent, invisible messenger of death, aimed with an almost surgical precision. Through the scope, Miller watched, his heart pounding in his chest, yet his mind remained utterly calm, observing the trajectory, the minute deviations, the final, inevitable destination. Jenkins, too, was fixed on the target, his breath held, his eyes wide. The officer, still speaking, suddenly stiffened. There was no visible impact, no dramatic explosion of matter, just a sudden, involuntary jerk, a violent, almost puppet-like spasm. He crumpled to the ground, his guards momentarily stunned before chaos erupted around the bunker entrance. Shouts, frantic movements, the sudden bark of orders. The scene dissolved into pandemonium. "He's down, Sarge! He's down!" Jenkins exclaimed, a tremor of disbelief and exhilaration in his voice. "Right in the spine, I think. Clean shot." Miller, without a word, began to pack his gear, his movements swift and practiced. He had done his part. The sniper angle had delivered. The shot, the impossible shot, had connected. And somewhere, across the ravine, a Japanese officer had just met his end, struck by a bullet traveling at an incredible speed, a speed that belied the vast distance it had traversed. The velocity, even after nearly 1,000 yards, was still devastating, still capable of tearing through flesh and bone with brutal efficiency. The sheer kinetic energy delivered was testament to Miller's unique understanding of ballistics and his unwavering faith in his own calculations. The conventional wisdom had been defied, shattered by a single, perfectly placed round. The jungle, for a moment, seemed to hold its breath, processing the silent, deadly message that had just been delivered. With the sudden silence of the jungle momentarily broken by the rifle's report, Miller and Jenkins wasted no time. Every second spent lingering was a risk. The pandemonium around the bunker entrance was their signal. Japanese soldiers, initially disoriented, would soon organize, and their first priority would be to pinpoint the source of the lethal shot. Miller quickly disassembled his Springfield, securing the barrel and scope. Jenkins, already packed, provided cover, his M1 Garand held ready, sweeping the dense foliage below. Their exit was as meticulously planned as the shot itself. They moved swiftly, retracing their steps along the treacherous path, their senses heightened, the adrenaline coursing through their veins a potent ally against fatigue and fear. The descent into the ravine was more perilous than the climb, loose scree and slick roots threatening to betray their position with every misplaced step. Miller, ever the pragmatist, felt a grim satisfaction. His calculations had been vindicated, but victory in this unforgiving theater was always fleeting. He knew this single success, no matter how spectacular, was merely a ripple in the vast ocean of conflict. They reached the American lines just as the first rays of dawn pierced the jungle canopy, painting the humid air in ethereal greens and golds. Exhausted but alert, they reported directly to Major Thompson's command tent. Captain Davies was also present, his face etched with the strain of a sleepless night. The tent was dimly lit by a single lantern, casting flickering shadows across their weary faces. "Sergeant Miller, Corporal Jenkins," Major Thompson greeted them, his voice low, his eyes scanning their mud-splattered uniforms. "Report." Miller, standing at attention, spoke calmly, succinctly. "Target acquired and neutralized, sir. High-ranking officer. Clean shot to the upper spine. Distance approximately 1,000 yards." A tense silence filled the tent. Captain Davies scoffed, a barely audible sound. 8,000 yards? Miller, are you certain? Did you confirm the kill?" Jenkins, stepping forward, his voice firm, interjected. "Yes, sir. Through the spotting scope. He went down hard. Chaos erupted immediately. They were scrambling, totally disorganized. We saw soldiers running in all directions, confused. And a medic detail was dispatched to the body within minutes. No chance of survival, sir. Major Thompson leaned back, a hand rubbing his jaw. He looked from Miller to Jenkins, a mixture of disbelief and profound relief warring on his face. Unbelievable, he muttered, more to himself than to them. We've been monitoring their comms. There's been a significant disruption. Their coordinated fire has ceased. They're reporting the loss of Commander Hiroshi, a colonel, apparently. It seems you were right, Sergeant. Against all odds. Davies' expression hardened. Right or lucky, Major? 1,000-yard shot on a moving target or a small opening, even for Miller, is a statistical anomaly. We can't build a strategy around such improbabilities. Miller remained impassive. It wasn't luck, Captain. It was applied physics. The sniper angle accounted for the atmospheric conditions, the Coriolis effect, and the specific ballistic trajectory required to maintain terminal velocity for maximum kinetic energy at impact. The bullet struck with devastating force, sir. Thompson held up a hand, silencing Davies. Regardless of the how, Sergeant, the outcome is undeniable. The Japanese command post is in disarray. Our scouts are reporting a significant drop in organized resistance. We're moving forward with the advance plan this morning, and thanks to your shot, our casualties should be significantly reduced. A genuine, if weary, smile touched the Major's lips. You've saved lives today, Miller. Many lives. The immediate impact of Miller's shot was indeed profound. The American advance, which had been stalled for weeks, gained significant ground in the following days. The Japanese, leaderless and disoriented, lacked the cohesive command structure to mount effective counterattacks. Their artillery, once precisely directed, now fired haphazardly, often missing American positions entirely. Morale among the Marines surged, a tangible relief washing over the weary men. Whispers of Eagle Eye and the impossible shot spread like wildfire through the ranks, turning Miller into a legend overnight, a ghost who could strike from anywhere at any time. But with this newfound legend came complications. Major Thompson found himself in a difficult position. While Miller's success was celebrated, it also drew unwanted attention and, more importantly, a misunderstanding of his unique capabilities. Other unit commanders, hearing of the 1,000-yard miracle, began requesting Miller for equally impossible tasks, often without grasping the intricate science and meticulous preparation involved. They saw a magic bullet, not a master of ballistics. Thompson, I need that sniper of yours, barked Colonel Peterson over the field radio, his voice crackling with static. We've got a mortar team pitting down our flank, dug into a ridge. Need him to take out their spotter. It's about 1,200 yards, but hell, if he can hit a Jap officer at 1,000, he can do this, right? Thompson sighed, rubbing his temples. Colonel, Sergeant Miller's previous shot was highly specific to the terrain and atmospheric conditions. It wasn't a general solution to every long-range problem. Each engagement requires extensive reconnaissance and precise calculations. He's not a walking artillery piece. He's a sniper, Thompson. A damn good one, apparently. Get him on it, Peterson retorted, his voice brooking no argument. Miller felt the pressure mounting. His sniper angle wasn't a trick. It was a deep understanding of physics, a precise application of knowledge. But to many, it was simply an uncanny ability, something to be exploited without comprehension. He was becoming a tool, rather than a respected expert. Captain Davies, still struggling with the unconventional nature of Miller's success, voiced his own concerns to Thompson. Major, while the outcome was favorable, relying on Miller's unique method sets a dangerous precedent. Other units will start expecting similar results, and when they don't get them, morale could plummet. Not to mention, it puts Miller at extreme risk. He can't be everywhere, and he can't make miracles on demand. Thompson knew Davies had a point. Miller's value was immense, but it was also fragile. He couldn't be overused, nor could his methods be misunderstood. He needed to protect Miller, both from the enemy and from the very allies who now hailed him as a savior. Meanwhile, on the Japanese side, the initial shock and disarray quickly gave way to a cold, burning fury. The loss of Colonel Hiroshi, a highly capable and respected officer, was a severe blow, not just strategically but psychologically. The surviving officers, led by the fanatical Captain Tanaka, swore vengeance. They understood that such a shot could only have come from a highly skilled sniper, and they were determined to eliminate him. Tanaka ordered an immediate increase in patrols, particularly in the deep ravines and dense jungle bordering American positions. He deployed his own elite snipers, men trained in the art of concealment and patient hunting, with specific instructions to find and neutralize the American ghost. Security around their remaining command structures was drastically enhanced, with decoy movements and unpredictable routines implemented to frustrate any further attempts at long-range assassinations. The jungle, already a deadly maze, now bristled with an even more insidious threat. The hunt was on. Miller, despite the accolades, felt the shift in the battlefield. The jungle, which had once felt like a complex equation to solve, now felt like a living, breathing predator, its eyes fixed on him. He noticed subtle changes, less predictable enemy movements, more frequent and aggressive probing patrols, and the chilling sensation of being watched. His sniper angle had given him an advantage, but it had also painted a target on his back. The stakes had been raised, and the next encounter would be far more personal, far more dangerous. He knew the Japanese would not rest until they had exacted their retribution, and he was their primary target. The jungle's humid breath, once a familiar companion, now carried a distinct chill of impending danger. He was no longer just hunting the enemy, he was being hunted in return. The jungle, once a familiar adversary, had indeed transformed into a living, breathing predator, its unseen eyes now fixed solely on Sergeant Frank Miller. The humid air, thick with the scent of decay, now carried a distinct chill of impending danger. The accolades, the whispers of "Eagle Eye," felt less like praise and more like a neon sign pointing directly at him. He was no longer just hunting the enemy, he was being hunted in return. Miller and Jenkins continued their patrols, but the nature of their missions had fundamentally changed. Every shadow held a potential threat, every rustle of leaves could signify an ambush. Miller's meticulous observations now extended beyond enemy positions to potential counter-sniper locations, escape routes, and defensive angles. He moved with heightened awareness, his senses acutely tuned to the subtle shifts in the environment, the telltale signs of disturbed foliage, the unnatural silence that often preceded an attack. One sweltering afternoon, as they scouted a ridge overlooking a Japanese supply route, Miller froze. He hadn't seen anything, but a primal instinct, honed by years of combat, screamed at him. He dropped to a crouch, pulling Jenkins down with him. "Stay low, Jenkins. Don't move. Listen." Jenkins, trusting Miller implicitly, pressed himself against the earth, his M1 Garand ready. A moment later, a faint, almost imperceptible thwip sound passed over their heads, followed by the distant, muffled report of a rifle. A Japanese sniper. The bullet had missed them by mere inches, striking a tree trunk behind where Miller had been standing a second before. "He's good," Miller whispered, scanning the dense canopy opposite them. "Very good. He waited for the wind, compensated for the range. He's using the same principles, just from the other side." It was a chilling realization. Tanaka's elite snipers were not just fanatical, but skilled. This was a game of equals. Back at headquarters, Major Thompson was fighting a different kind of battle. The constant demands for Miller's magic touch were escalating. "Major, I've got a bridge 75 miles north," boomed General Harrison over the radio. "Japs are dug in around it. Need Miller to take out their heavy gun emplacements. He can do it, right? Heard about that 1,000-yard shot." Thompson pinched the bridge of his nose. "General, with all due respect, Sergeant Miller is a sniper, not a demolition expert. And 75 miles is beyond any practical range for a rifle. His previous success was due to unique circumstances and meticulous preparation that cannot simply be replicated on demand." He was growing weary of explaining the difference between skill and sorcery. He knew Miller was being pushed to the brink, and the increased Japanese counter-sniper activity confirmed his fears. Miller was too valuable to lose to a misunderstanding of his own genius. Thompson called Miller and Jenkins to his tent. Captain Davies was also present, his usual skepticism now tinged with a reluctant concern for Miller's safety. "Sergeant, Corporal, intelligence reports confirm Captain Tanaka has deployed a dedicated counter-sniper unit. They're good. Very good. They're hunting you, Miller." "We've noticed, sir," Miller replied, his voice flat. "They're adapting. Using similar tactics, trying to anticipate my positions." Davies spoke, a rare note of genuine worry in his tone. "Miller, we can't afford to lose you. Your value to this campaign extends beyond a single shot. But we also can't keep sending you out to be a target. We need a plan." Thompson nodded. "Exactly. We believe Tanaka himself might be leading some of these patrols, looking for a personal kill. He wants vengeance for Colonel Hiroshi. We need to turn the tables. We need to flush them out, or at least neutralize their top snipers, so you can operate with less risk." Miller, his mind already calculating, saw an opportunity. "Sir, I've been studying their patterns. They're methodical, but predictable in their method of observation. They favor specific high ground, certain lines of sight. They're looking for my angle, but they don't understand the angle." He pointed to a map. "There's a ridge, approximately 1,100 yards from a known Japanese forward observation post. It's a difficult approach, heavily covered by their snipers. But if we can create a diversion, draw their attention away, I believe I can get to a position that offers an unprecedented advantage." Davies scoffed, but less vehemently this time. "Another sniper angle, Miller? What's the target this time, a mosquito?" "No, sir," Miller said, his eyes fixed on the map. "The target is their snipers. Specifically, their lead spotters and their most aggressive riflemen. I believe I can use the same principles of elevation, wind currents funneling through the valley, and the Coriolis effect to strike at targets that believe they are safely out of range, or even invisible." He proposed a complex maneuver, a feigned American assault on a different sector, drawing Tanaka's main force and attention, while he and Jenkins, with a small security detail, would infiltrate the designated ridge. His target would be specific Japanese sniper nests that had been particularly active. Thompson considered it, weighing the risks. It was audacious, even for Miller. But the alternative was to lose their most potent asset. "All right, Miller. You have it. Captain Davies, I want you to coordinate the diversionary assault. Make it convincing. Give Miller every advantage you can." Davies, though still uncomfortable with the sheer unconventionality, recognized the necessity. "Understood, Major. We'll make enough noise to wake the dead." The next 24 hours were a whirlwind of meticulous planning. Davies' diversionary assault was planned for dawn, a full-scale barrage of artillery, and a staged infantry push designed to draw Tanaka's full attention. Meanwhile, Miller and Jenkins, accompanied by a small, hand-picked squad of Marines, moved under the cover of darkness towards the designated ridge. The jungle was alive with the sounds of their own advance, the distant rumble of artillery, and the intermittent crackle of small arms fire. Their infiltration was agonizingly slow. Every step was measured, every shadow scrutinized. They bypassed booby traps and silent tripwires, relying on Miller's uncanny ability to read the terrain and Jenkins' sharp eyes for hidden details. They knew Tanaka's snipers would be watching their flanks, anticipating a counter-move, but their focus would primarily be on the feigned assault. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky, the diversionary assault began. The jungle erupted in a symphony of destruction. The thunder of American artillery, the chatter of machine guns, the distant shouts of men. Miller and his team, now on the high ground of the ridge, had a panoramic view of the chaos unfolding below. "They're taking the bait, Sarge," Jenkins whispered, his scope trained on a distant Japanese position, now heavily engaged with Davies' feigned attack. "Their snipers are moving to cover their lines." Miller, however, was looking elsewhere. He pointed to a series of subtle glints and disturbances in the foliage on an opposing ridge, nearly 1,100 yards away, well beyond what was considered safe range for a counter-sniper. "There. 3 of them. 1 on the exposed rock, 2 in the canopy above. They're watching the main assault, but they'll be looking for any flanking movement. They're highly exposed from our angle." He once again meticulously set up his Springfield M1903A4. The calculations were even more complex this time. He wasn't just hitting a static target, he was hitting hardened snipers, themselves masters of concealment, who believed they were untouchable from this range. The sniper angle would need to be perfect. He accounted for the intense crosswinds swirling through the valley, the extreme elevation difference, the Coriolis effect, and even the subtle atmospheric distortions caused by the rising heat from the distant explosions. His first target was the sniper on the exposed rock. Miller waited, his breath held, for the precise moment when the wind currents aligned. He squeezed the trigger. The rifle barked, and a split second later, the distant figure on the rock twitched violently, then slumped forward, disappearing from view. "First one down, Sarge! Clean headshot," Jenkins reported, a mix of awe and grim satisfaction in his voice. The 2 remaining snipers in the canopy, startled by the sudden, inexplicable loss of their comrade, began to shift, searching for the source of the shot. They didn't look in Miller's direction. They looked towards the main American assault. It was their fatal mistake. Miller shifted his aim, targeting the second sniper, barely visible amidst the leaves. Another shot, another impossible distance, another precisely calculated trajectory. The sniper fell, crashing through the branches like a broken doll. The third, now in a full panic, began scrambling, desperate to find cover. Miller didn't hesitate. His third shot found its mark, silencing the last of Tanaka's elite counter-snipers in that sector. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant sounds of the diversionary battle. Miller had not only eliminated the immediate threat, but had done so in a way that left the enemy utterly bewildered. They wouldn't know what hit them, or from where. The sniper angle had once again defied logic, turning the hunters into the hunted. Word of Miller's latest feat spread quickly, even amidst the ongoing battle. This time, the reaction was different. Major Thompson, hearing the reports of Japanese sniper nests inexplicably going silent, felt a profound relief mixed with a growing understanding. Captain Davies, observing the subsequent disarray in Japanese counter-movements, finally shed his skepticism. The statistical anomaly had become a pattern, a repeatable application of a unique skill. When Miller and Jenkins returned, exhausted but triumphant, to headquarters, Major Thompson met them with a solemn nod. "Sergeant Miller, your actions today have effectively neutralized Tanaka's most dangerous counter-sniper assets. Their coordinated resistance has collapsed. We're breaking through their lines. You've saved countless lives again. Davies, uncharacteristically, extended his hand to Miller. Sergeant, I admit I was wrong. Your sniper angle isn't luck or theory. It's a mastery of your craft I've never witnessed before. My apologies for my earlier doubts. Miller simply nodded, acknowledging the rare respect. He knew the war wasn't over, but his personal battle for understanding and acceptance had found a resolution. Major Thompson, now fully committed to protecting his most valuable asset, immediately put in a request to higher command. He argued not for Miller's removal from combat, but for his strategic reassignment. Sergeant Miller is not a tool to be wielded blindly, General, Thompson explained to a now listening General Harrison. He is a specialist, a scientist of ballistics. His capabilities need to be understood, not just exploited. He could train others, develop new tactics, identify strategic points that conventional methods miss entirely. He could save more lives by shaping our approach to long-range engagement than by being continually exposed as a lone target. The general, impressed by the undeniable results and Thompson's passionate advocacy, agreed. Sergeant Frank Miller, Eagle Eye, was soon assigned to a newly formed Advanced Reconnaissance and Precision Engagement Unit. His days of being a lone wolf, constantly hunted, were drawing to a close. He would still operate on the front lines, but now with resources, a dedicated team that understood his methods, and a command structure that valued his unique perspective. He would spend fewer hours simply pulling a trigger and more hours teaching, developing, and applying his profound understanding of the sniper angle to the broader challenges of the Pacific Campaign. The jungle, though still a deadly crucible, no longer felt like a personal predator. Miller had turned the tables, not just on Tanaka's snipers, but on the very misunderstanding of his gift. He was no longer just a sniper. He was a pioneer, a man who had proven that sometimes the most impossible shot was merely a complex equation waiting to be solved. And in the unforgiving theater of war, where every inch of ground was paid for in blood, such knowledge was priceless. The hum of the jungle, thick with the promise of continued struggle, now carried a faint, almost imperceptible echo of a new kind of precision, a new way to fight, born from a man who dared to see the world in angles others simply ignored.